A very good morning to you all. Allow me to extend our warmest greeting to our eminent speaker and guest, His Excellencies, Rector of University of Sabahattin Zaim, Professor Dr. Mehmet Bulu. His Excellencies, Rector of University of Darussalam Gontor, Professor Dr. K.H. Hamid Fahmi Zarkasi, MAED, MPhil. The Honorable Vice Rector of University of Darussalam Gontor, Dr. Hairul Umam, ED. Dr. Ozan Marasle, Doctor of the International Center for Waqf Study, Mr. Sahrudin, all distinguished delegates and fellow students. First of all, we would like to give thanks to the Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, who has bestowed His mercy and blessing who come to attend this seminar. Salawat and salam to our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who guided us, lead us to the light. Also, we would like to thank each and every one of you to gathering here today. I'm Fadila Wimanda, and it is a great honor to be your master ceremony in today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome you to today's seminar titled The Islamization of Contemporary Knowledge, Moderate Muslim and Waqf Development. This seminar is part of an agenda of the bilateral relationship between the University of Sabahattin Zaim and the University of Darussalam Gontor. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegate, and fellow students, as protocol demand, we would like to commence the program with the Turkish national anthem and the Indonesian national anthem. Therefore, we would like to invite us to be on our feet as we observe the anthem. National Anthem of Republic Indonesia.
Salam
kindly take your seat. Now we move to the speech segment. To start with, I would like to invite to the podium Director of Sabahattin Zain University, Prof. Dr. Mehmet Bulu.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Vel akıbetu lil muttaqin. Vessalatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmaîn. Esselamu aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Dear Rector of UNIDA, dear Vice Rector of UNIDA, dear Vice President of İstanbul Zaim University, they are the director of SIGA at İstanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. They are professors, lecturers, they are students, ladies and gentlemen. I am really very happy today to have our guests from our sister country, Indonesia, UNIDA education group and waqf institution. And I am also very happy to discuss, to be together with this good title of the topic, the importance of the waqf for the contemporary world, and to, try to discuss our heritage and to try to make some contributions for our institutions, for our countries and the future of humanity. I am very proud to say that this university, İstanbul Sabahattin Zaim University, as a waqf university, as a waqf institution based on our long history, long Ottoman heritage, because it was the Ottoman Agricultural College and Veterinary School. It was established in 19th century by Abdülhamid II. And before that time, the land was again the waqf land. It was donated by Sultan Beyazıt II, the son of the conqueror of Istanbul, Muhammed Fatih Han. Sultan Beyazıt donated this land as a waqf in 15th century. That means we are now on the waqf land, on the waqf university, and on this land so many important persons, scholars, thinkers, and sultans passed away, walked around this area. In Arabic word, we call Sharaful Mekan bil Mekin. How I can translate to English? It is honorable place is with its citizens, with its residents. So you can imagine how many important people and important scholars from ulama, from arifin, they walked around this area. And we are feeling now something from that heritage. Alhamdulillah, thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a very short period, this university was established in 2010 and started education in 2011. Now we are in 10th year. In 2021 we are. We reached to 11,000 students. We reached to 25 PhD programs, 76 master programs, and 38 undergraduate programs, with 2,500 students from 95 different countries. And Alhamdulillah, in recent 2 years, we reached to, in Europe, in top 200, and in Asia, in top 200, in green metrics. And I am also very proud to say that in recent year, in last year, we reached to top 200 in Times Higher Education ranking in 2 areas, in responsible consumption and production, and also in reducing the poverty in all of the world. You can imagine these 2 areas are very crucial for our waqf mentality. The waqf's main role is to finish the poverty in Islamic world, in our countries, and also in the rest of the world, and responsible in our production and consumption is very important for our civilization. So we have some mottos in this campus at İstanbul Sabahattin Zaim University. Zero waste, zero interest. So here we were awarded as the best education in Islamic economics and finance by European group. And now we are in the center, International Center for Islamic Economics and Finance. With this center, we have graduate programs on master and PhD in English, in Arabic, and in Turkish. We have also undergraduate programs. So we have several research centers, but this center is one of the most important. And also with SIGA, Center for Islam and Global Affairs, we are working on these issues based on our civilization. So you can imagine the capitalism based on just private property, you know. They have 3 main pillars: freedom, private property, and free market economy, you know. This is their mottos. For socialist system, you know, central planning of economy, public property, and equality. For our civilization, Islamic civilization, there is freedom, there is market economy, there is, you know, the private property, but more we have justice, adalah. More we have waqf mentality, to serve for the others. And we have more, we have ethics, ahlak. To respect to the rights of the others is very crucial. Not to disturb any person, not just person, to respect to all creations, to the animals, to plants, fauna and flora. We have to respect to the environment. So I can add more as the list on the basic, you know, pillars of Islamic mentality, our civilization. Today we will discuss on the waqf mentality. And here again, I would, before ending, I would like to stress, Alhamdulillah, under my leadership as personally, thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we worked more than 10 years with 20 scholars, and we finished a good project with the support of Central Bank of Turkey, Ottoman cash waqfs. These are very important institutions. Before that, again, I would like to stress, we finished a new book on, the title is Islamic Economic Thought. Islamic Economic Thought. Thinkers started from Imam Abu Hanifa and we finished with Sabahattin Zaim and Arif Ersoy, alhamdulillah. This is our mentality, thinking. But institutions are also very important for our civilization and for the modern world. And one of the most important institutions is the waqf institution. Inside of waqf, there are very different waqfs. Ottoman civilization can be accepted as a waqf civilization. They established very different waqfs. Waqfs for birds, waqfs for, the children, waqfs for unmarried young generation. Very different, not just for poor, not just for education, not just for health care. Very different waqfs. So they try to cover all humanity. But they also established cash waqfs. Cash waqfs are the original Ottoman institutions. When the Westerners established the banks with interest, when they established the modern capitalist system, the Ottomans established free interest institutions based on the waqf mentality. Waqf is based on charity, on donation. You are donating and then you are not following the profit or any kind of earning. You are giving for humanity, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Donation. Then these funds are playing a role first to finance the religious for dawah, for the masjid service, for imams' salary, for muezzins, for cleaning the masjids. Then these funds were used for financing the educational institutions, madrasas. Then these funds were used for financing the economy, entrepreneurs. And they extend. So these institutions, we collected all the data from the archives just for Ottoman Europe. Half of Ottoman lands were in Europe, for Ottoman cash waqfs for 500 years. And we prepared more than 11 volumes just for the documents, more than 1,000 documents, and we translated from Ottoman Turkish to modern Turkish, and prepared the summaries in 3 languages, Turkish, English, and Arabic. And also we prepared a summary of the project in 3 languages again. For what? Not just for Turks, for all Islamic Ummah. From Indonesia till Maghreb, the Muslims need to cover this heritage, Ottoman civilization. The last representative of Islamic civilization were the Ottomans. Modern times, the Khalifa was in Istanbul, So we as Arabs, as Turks, as Indonesians, as Persians, as Europeans, as Asians, we have to cover this Ottoman heritage from the waqf to the economy, from the law again to the political life, from the mentality to the institutions, to understand our right way for the future. This heritage is very important. My last words. We were talking on this issue. I heard today, I do not know, Indonesians also use Arabic alphabet. We were using Arabic alphabet, the letters were in Arabic, in Ottoman language. Urdu, for Indian continent, the letters were the same. For Persia, it was the same. If it is the same letters for Indonesia, can you imagine for Indonesia till Maghreb, from the eastern corner to the western corner, we are using the same alphabet. We can read all the books at the same letters as the language of our holy book. What happened in last century after the collapse of Ottoman Empire? First in Turkey, we changed our alphabet from Ottoman, from Arabic letters to Latin. Nowadays, forget about the ordinary people, the scholars, the thinkers, the intellectuals, the professors. I can ask you, how many of you as Turks can read Ottoman language? And this is Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University, very strong on this heritage. You can find very rare. Just 100 years ago, we were using, this was our language. In 1928, we changed. Our heritage is based on this language for a millennium. All documents, all our heritage is in Ottoman letters. How many of you can read it from original documents? How can you say, I am the intellectual of this country, this geography, this civilization? The same I can ask for Indonesia. The same I can ask for Indian continent, for Pakistan, for India. What happened? They first took our mind. Who? Big powers. Imperialists, it's very clear. We were living in the same world as a one family. The people are thinking we're their language. First, they changed our language. We were living as one family in one world. I also prepared a book on Silk Road. On this Silk Road, we were trading, we were exchanging the ideas. We were free trading from Indonesia till Maghreb, from Asia to Europe, from Africa to Europe, What happened then? They first changed our alphabet, and we start to think that we are different. They divided us first by our mindset, then by our believing. Then we start to believe that we are different. They are Indonesians, they are Persians, they are Indians, we are Turks, they are Arabs, because language is different. Can you imagine what happened in a very short time? 50 or 60 years after the collapse of Ottoman Empire, just 2 states became independent on the land. But in practice, can you imagine the modernization projects in these countries, in these 3 countries, Turkey, Afghanistan, and Iran? The rest of Islamic world under the exploiters. They had to fight for independence till Second World War, till 1950s, 60s. Till that time, we reached, to 57 independent countries. On the table, theoretically, we are independent. But think about our free thinking, free, independent intellectual capacity. How much is in our mindset? How can think independently? We are independent or dependent to some? This is a big question. So we are trying to refine, recover, regenerating our heritage. The topic is this. Thank you so much for coming, for being with us. I hope a successful conference.
Thank you very much for the speech, dear Prof. Next, for another welcoming speech, I would like to invite to the podium Director of Darussalam Gontor University, Professor Dr. K.H. Fahmi Zarkasi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wa bihi nasta'in. Ala umuri dunya wa din. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammad ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Respectable Director of University of Sabahat and Zaim, Professor Dr. Mohammed Bulut, and all the lecturers, also the Vice Rector, all the students and all the participants of this seminar. Before I start to give some kind of speech, I would like to introduce University of Dar es Salaam from the very simple education from primary education in 1926, 2 years after the collapse of Ottoman. And the spirit of this establishment is also to revive the Muslim Ummah, because we see that Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch and by the Spain, and we were very poor in hundreds of years under the colonization. So this education institution developed gradually until 2014 we become universities. Before in 1963 it became institute with small faculties. Now we become universities. University with faculties, 8 faculties, but our student is very limited because we apply the boarding system in our university where the students live in dormitory and they have to say the prayer 5 times in the campus, and they have to stay with us and intermingle with the teachers for 24 hours. So this is a type of what we call pondok or pesantren in our bahasa. I think like a madrasah or Imam Hatib in Turkey is very similar. This is the tradition in Islamic world. And nowadays we develop our university, and fortunately we have the same vision and mission with the Sabahatain University, and of course we are waqf university. Dar es Salaam University is waqf university, and fortunately the rector of is also expert on this regard, and we would like to collaborate, of course. I would like to set back from our beginning where colonialization become the problem of Muslim Ummah with the idea of scholarization, separating education from Islamic teaching with the secular sciences. We also solved this problem from our beginning, the beginning of our school in secondary level. We also solved the problem of this dichotomy between science and religion. So we teach the student from 1936 science and religion. The students at that time study mathematics, physics, biology. Also they study tafsir, hadith, and fiqh, and so many other religious sciences. And of course the idea is this, to let the student know that Islam is not only religion in the sense of theology. Islam is also science, and we have our heritage in the last that Islam developed philosophy, Islam developed science, developed economic. We also developed politics and so many things related to the worldly affair that always related to religion. So our seminar actually is responding this kind of challenge against the Muslim Ummah. And the idea of Islamization of contemporary knowledge is closely related to the problem of secularism. You know, knowledge developed due to or based on the worldview. Knowledge developed based on ideology. Knowledge was developed by culture and basic belief. The Western people believe on secularism, separation between religion and science. And therefore, there is no religion in science and no science in religion. So this is the position of Western civilization in nowadays situation. We want to solve this, and we have to say that Islam is religion and civilization. where we talk about science based on religion. And fortunately, the idea of waqf is in fact the integration between Islamic teaching with the social life. So we cannot separate social life with religion, contrary to the West. In the West, if you talk about the public issues, no way you to talk about religion. If you talk about public affair, you have no right to talk about religion, because religion in the West nothing to do with the public life. But Islam is the religion that related to the personal life and social life, and also in the larger sense, civilizational life. So today, I think it would be very fruitful when we talk about how to deal with this science that was developed in the Western civilization, which is based on secularism and humanism also. Islam is the religion that respects humanity, but we are not religion that only focus on humanity, but we also focus on humanity, morality, religious tenet, and so many things. That Islam is a religion with holistic concept where life, individual life, social life, political life, economic life is integrated in one system. So I would like to appreciate also the orientation, the vision of this university with the leadership of Professor Mehmet Bulut, where developing the idea of waqf based on Ottoman tradition is the only thing that we can back to the past. Ottoman is the last Muslim power where politics and economic and education are intermingled, integrated in one concept. And we have to assume that nothing can develop in Islam without the basis of our Sharia. And of course, we believe that in the Ottoman period, economic and Sharia is the thing that we cannot separate. Nowadays, we have the problem with the moderate. I think there will be one other issue about this. The term moderate is the term that has been occupied by the Western meaning. You know, the Western civilization nowadays is not the modern Western civilization, but this is postmodern Western civilization where you cannot talk about the truth. Truth is very relative. So in the West nowadays, nobody can talk about the absolute truth, where religion is there. The truth can be depend on anybody or every head of the people. So they are playing with this term moderate Muslim. They similarize with the idea of wasatiyah. Islam is the religion in the middle between the excessive believing or worshipping God like Christianity and the religion that mostly oriented to materialism. Islam is in the middle. Islam is also the religion that's the way we live in between, living in the world and the hereafter. So Islam is religion which has the balance between life in the world and hereafter. So we also have the balance between the rationalism or rationalistic thinking and the scripture. This is what we call ummatan wasatan. We are the people who are in the middle of the extreme, two extreme. But in the West nowadays, people don't talk about the truth because they say the truth and the false have the same level. So if you talk the truth, somebody else can say that, can judge that the truth can be false. This is very bad for us. Relativism and the idea of postmodernism now become the idea of moderation. And what is moderate according to the Western civilization? The moderate Muslim are those believe in humanism. The moderate Muslim are those who believe that the Prophet is not the person to emulate. moderate Muslim are those people who anti-Sharia. So the term has been occupied by the meaning that the Western people say about that. So we have to avoid this. Therefore, we have to back to our basic teaching. What is meant by wasatiyah? What is meant by Sharia? What is meant in Islam by the word belief, iman? So we have to be committed to the trilogy of Islam, that is Sharia, Aqidah and Akhlaq, Islam, Iman and Ihsan. And then we have to apply this in our civilization. Because when you commit to the Sharia, you say the 5 times prayer, doing Hajj, doing fasting and so on. So, and you believe in God, and you believe in God, you implement, you believe in God in the society, and then when you believe in God, of course, you become a good man. Because believing and action is one thing. Believing and saying is one action. So in Islam, the act, the speech, the feeling, the thought should be oriented to our belief in God. Therefore, Islam is the peaceful religion. Islam is the religion of peace. And therefore, I think we don't have the issue of moderation. We are in Indonesia facing this kind of accusation that Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are fundamentalists, and against the Republic, against the peaceful world. This is nothing. This is nonsense. The good Muslim never do a bad thing for humanity and for any other human being. So we believe, I think we have the same mission here to create our future based on our history and our legacy. And I think Turkey has very rich legacy, and we have to learn much from this country, and we have to learn much about our future economy. And I believe that waqf is the only system that can face the system of capitalism. And we in Indonesia, our university have collaborated with the Central Bank of Indonesia to develop the waqf system. And I think we have to learn much from Your Excellency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With this historical agreement, we can now begin the main session of the seminar, which will be moderated by Mr. Syed Salahuddin Al-Idrus. Please take your time.
Hello, good morning everyone. So my name is Syed Salahuddin Al-Idrus. I'm a master's student in Islamic Economics and Finance, and currently I'm a research assistant to Brian Kettle, focusing on Sukuk. So I'm very honored to be invited here as a moderator here to our today's seminar. First of all, dear rector and vice rector and all of the lecturers, ladies and gentlemen, friends, welcome to our today's seminar with entitled Islamization of Contemporary Knowledge, Moderate Muslims and Waqf Development. And I think for the first two speakers, the opening speakers, speak by rector, and it is very interesting topics. Now we are moving to the keynote speaker, to the main stage. Please welcome our keynote speaker. First of all is Professor Dr. Sami Al-Ryan. Welcome to the stage, sir. And also we have our second speaker, which is Dr. Ozan Marashul. Please welcome to the stage. And also for our third speaker, for Darussalam Gontor, which is Dr. Khairul Umam. Please welcome to the stage. And the last but not least, Mr. Sharifuddin. Please, Mr. Shahruddin, please welcome to the stage. So here I am as moderator. I will try to host this seminar. So without any further delay, the first speaker will be Professor Dr. Sami Al-Ryan. I will okay. Okay, there is some delay. Okay, first, for our main speaker will be Dr. Mehmet Bulut. Also, he would like to share his information. I finished. Okay. Okay. Now let's move on. Also here we are in our seminar today, Professor Dr. Sami Al-Ryan. Please welcome Professor Dr. Sami Al-Ryan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين وبعد. Rectors, honorable rectors, vice rectors, faculty and staff, and students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to be with you this afternoon to talk about the Islamization of knowledge paradigm. The Islamic of knowledge paradigm is a consequence of a century or centuries of the Ummah decline. I remember that the first time that this term was used was in the late 70s by the scholar Al-Attas, as well as by the subsequent scholars who addressed this topic in the United States. First by Ismail Farouqi, rahmatullahi alayh. I knew Ismail Farouqi and I had a discussion with him. Unfortunately, he died early after the inauguration of this project back in '81 as the Triple IT project, the Institute of Islamic, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, which was again in the United States. And the word Islamization and the word knowledge, obviously, have their own connotation. What does it mean when we say Islamization? And what are we talking about when we talk about knowledge? And why is it raised now after over 1400 years of the Ummah pursuit towards knowledge and progress? If we go back to the early days of Islam, the early days of Medina, of course the word was different. That word was not the same as the word we live in today. It's an interconnected word. Yet there was a paradigm that developed within that context. And that paradigm depended pretty much on revelation, on the belief, on Tawheed, which I will discuss briefly. As I said, time is limited, so I just try to make points rather than go through details. But for over 1400 years, there was a civilization that was based on this paradigm, the Tawheedi paradigm. And that, as Professor Bulut, Rector Bulut, and Rector Zakrisi explained, that paradigm extended from Morocco to Indonesia and was able to dominate pretty much when we talk about knowledge, when we talk about civilization, when we talk about philosophy, law, science, and all kinds of disciplines. And then we faced a challenge. That challenge came by the 17th century through Renaissance, through Enlightenment, through Western advancement of sciences. So what we are faced with is a challenge to that paradigm, to the Islamic paradigm. Many people may, as Al-Attas said, refer to that as the secular paradigm. that secular paradigm permeated into the Islamic world. It was that how we approach knowledge, the epistemology of different disciplines, was pretty much infused within the Islamic world through the process, as directors explained, imperialism, colonialism. And we reached the point where the gap between the two civilizations, if you will, became wide. And then we saw that these disciplines, whether it is in the realm of science or humanities, have their own paradigm, the secular paradigm. And then those who believe in revelation, believe in different kinds of epistemology, start trying to respond to that knowledge, to that challenge. And that's where the word Islamization of knowledge came about. They have different definitions as well as criticism. I don't have the time to go over it, but there are some people like Professor Farouqi who never really completed his thoughts because, as I said, he died early in that experiment. For him was to reorganize, recast these disciplines which have dominated the world in terms of knowledge, whether it's in political science, international relations, economics, anthropology, sociology, cultural studies, all kinds of knowledge, including the sciences and applied sciences, that they have become the accepted truths in this world. That he wanted to go and reorganize and recast by invigorating the Islamic knowledge and the Islamic vision of these and the origins of these things, and try to reorganize them and recast them in a way that they could be so-called Islamized. Many people actually criticized that approach, and then it progressed through different versions, whether it was Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman or Taha Jabir al-Alwani or other scholars as they came about. And some actually called for disengagement and then engagement. In other words, saying we have to disengage with Western philosophy and Western epistemology because they are based on biased knowledge. It's not based on unbiased knowledge. And therefore, we need to disengage, and then until we understand our own paradigm, we can go back and engage. There were several scholars who called for that. While others also called for a theoretical part followed by a practical part. What I'm trying to tell you here is to summarize that this paradigm, or this theory rather, is not something that can actually solve the problem that we have today simply by saying Islamization of knowledge. Because we live in a world today where the secular model dominates the Muslim world. When we talk about colonialism and imperialism, as was mentioned earlier, most Muslim countries have actually gained their nominal independence less than 40, 50, 60 years ago. While in actuality, the system we live in today is no different. It's probably even more complicated because of fragmentation, political fragmentation, economic dependence, and westernization. It's actually worse than it was before. You know, before, even under colonization, people could actually travel from country to country without having to go through all these obstacles. And yet today we live in this nation-state system with our own secular minds, even if we think that we are not secular. The way we dress, the way we eat, the way we talk, the way we travel, the way we transport, the way we think, it's all really based on the secular model. And for us to challenge that secular model, obviously, is by itself a challenge. Because in many countries, even in the Muslim countries, many people have accepted secularism. It has become dominant in our lives, where to think otherwise is actually the oddity, the exception. So we go back and said, what do we mean by Islamization of knowledge? To me, we have basically two paradigms. One paradigm is two-dimensional. The secular paradigm is two-dimensional. On one end, you have man. On the other end, you have universe. And they interact, and the basic dialectic, the basic dynamic between man and universe is to how to subjugate it, how to control it, how to be in charge of it, through conflict or other means, but that's the secular mind, that's the material paradigm, where the existence of other sources of knowledge is absent. The sources of knowledge between man that is trying to control this universe, to control nature, is whatever they can see, feel, hear, control, touch the material world. In the Islamic paradigm, we have a triangle with three indices. Man and universe, but the third index is God. And God becomes the center of that world. In the secular paradigm, man is the center of the world. In the Islamic paradigm, God is the focus of the world. And that makes a lot of difference between how we approach things, including sciences and including how we understand knowledge. Knowledge is the ability to understand fully a particular subject. Plato says knowledge is justified through belief. It's not dogma, because religion in the West, because of the experiences of centuries of the dominance of the church, dogma becomes unjustified belief. You just have to believe and that's it. When we talk about the Islamic paradigm with three indices, and we talk about God, that means there is another source. Now, the question is, what is that source? Because our knowledge is also limited. There is a world that we see, the seen world, in which we can discover that knowledge through the intellectual work, through our minds, and through discoveries, and through all kinds of efforts, what we call ijtihad, whether it's by mind or juhd, by our hands. Or there's another kind of knowledge, which is knowledge that we can never know, because we are limited. That knowledge comes from revelation. And that's why we have scholars such as Abu Qasim Haj Hamad, the Sudanese philosopher, as well as Dr. Taha Jabir Anwani, talking about the combining of the two sources, or the combining of the two books, meaning one book is revelation, and one book is nature. And we combine them, and through them we can understand and get knowledge, true knowledge. Now that's, in a nutshell, what an Islamic paradigm would be, is to have these three dialectics between God, man, God, universe, universe, man. And if God is the focus, then we have to resort to these two kinds of sources of knowledge, which is revelation as well as discoveries, such as what we know, what we can understand from human interaction with the universe and with each other. Now, if we believe in this paradigm, then when we talk about Islamic knowledge rather than Islamization of knowledge, because that knowledge that we got through the Western experience, through the secular experience, has its own biases and its own assumptions and premises and hypotheses. If we start from that, that's going to be a much difficult situation to go and try to reorient and redefine whatever these hypotheses are. But rather, we can see how science progressed through centuries of Islamic civilization, as well as other disciplines, such as, for instance, history as it was, and sociology as it was invented, as it was discovered, as it was written about by Ibn Khaldun. Then when we talk about that paradigm, then we talk about how Islam approaches sciences, biology, mathematics, chemistry, physics, astrology, astronomy, and so on and so forth. All these different things. Even science today cannot answer the question. You know, if you read Steve Hawkins, One is considered the greatest mind in physics with Einstein. He sees two forces at work here that they cannot be explained. You know, at the macro level, you get the Newtonian physics, and at the micro level, you have quantum physics, and both actually cannot be explained together. There is a force behind them. We call it God, others call it unknown forces. And he said, if I can have one theory that explains Newtonian physics with quantum physics both together, then I don't need God. Of course, he never realized that there is God, but he could not understand this, he could not explain this, and no other physicist could. So when you have systems that actually are in harmony, but yet they contradict when it comes to explanation, that they know there is something beyond our knowledge, beyond our capacity to understand, and therefore, we get that from revelation. Now, for us as Muslims, revelation means the Quran. And this is how we need to involve and to understand the Quran that goes into it. That's where the comment by Professor Booth about alphabet, it becomes extremely relevant. Because to understand the Quran fully, to understand its meanings, and to reflect upon how it is relevant to our lives, you really have to understand it as much as possible in its own language. At any rate, what I want to conclude, because the time here is limited and we started a bit late, is this. We need to adopt a paradigm in our educational institutions. And it's very difficult, and I realize this. And that's where waqf becomes relevant, because you need to be independent. You need to have independent institutions where you can actually start looking into this. When we talk about freedom, and when we talk about change, these are the things that we would like to advance in our work. You need freedom. I don't want the state to control how I think or what I do. And if that happens, there is no really intellectual development. How I can be independent of the state is through being independent institution. And it has to be done through institutions. And that's why when we see Islamic revivalist movements, political Islam, Islamic, whatever you want to call it, Islamic modern movements, and so on and so forth, they were obsessed with political power, because they thought through political power we can impose change. And on the other side, we have the intellectual development movement, where it's saying, I don't care about politics. If I can change how we think, eventually that would get into politics. And we saw that both of these movements are still struggling, because without political power, you can't really, even if you have a theory, apply it. And without intellectual freedom and curiosity and work in a free political environment, you cannot develop. So we need to solve this dilemma. I don't have an answer today, but we need to resolve this dilemma. How we can have freedom so that we can think freely without the imposition of politicians who want to use how we think and how we work to their own advantage. How we disengage from the secular model that dominates our life, particularly economically. I mean, we became, it doesn't matter where you live, Muslim or not, a consumer society. We think in those terms. We think of material world, how we can change that, and try to think of how we can advance the state of man, of the people, rather than to be thinking always in material terms. I want to end with this thought to show the difference between an Islamic paradigm that is based on the three indices, God, man, universe, and the secular paradigm that is based on man, universe. We in Islam think of what is called al-kulliyat al-khams, the fifth higher purpose of Sharia. حفظ الدين, حفظ النفس, حفظ العقل, حفظ العرض, حفظ المال. The preservation of faith, or the right to believe and the right to understand, and that is something that we need to preserve in society. the preservation of self, the preservation of rationality, again, how you think. The first is what you believe, how you think. The preservation of honor, of family, and the preservation of property. When you look at the secular model, they only care about two things: حفظ النفس and حفظ المال, the preservation of self and the preservation of property. So what happens is that you have deterioration now in family relations, in gender relations, on the role of different societies, the different members of society. And all the breakdown that you see today is because there are no higher principles honored by society. And I can give you dozens of examples, including, of course, حفظ العقل, how you can preserve your mind. I mean, so today, intoxicants is fine. It doesn't matter because it advances the other paradigm. And so on, and gender relations, and so on and so forth. So when you approach it from that stand, then you have absorbed your civilization and the assumptions and hypotheses and premises in that, and there you can start looking into the problems and the disciplines and how you deal with them, all the different humanities, social sciences, as well as applied sciences, rather than start from different premises, different assumptions, different hypotheses that reach different conclusions. At the end, what our goal is to advance humanity and civilization so that it will be in unison, in harmony with how this world was created by one God. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Okay, thank you so much for Dr. Sami Al-Ryan. What an inspiring topic we have today, and how Professor Dr. Sami Al-Ryan delivered the main idea between the Islamic paradigm and the secular paradigm. And of course, most of us today may have heard from the lecture, the seminar from Dr. Sami Al-Ryan. But for those who don't know, Dr. Sami Al-Ryan is the director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs, or SIGA, and currently he is the public affairs professor at İstanbul Sabahat Zaim University. And ladies and gentlemen, and we still have many interesting topics today, and how Dr. Sami just told us how waqf Islamic paradigms interconnecting between each other. So stay here and we will listen to other speakers. For this seminar, we have two segments. The first segment, there will be a short duration for question and answer. And after that, the last two speakers will also end it with question segment. And without any further delay, I will give the stage for Dr. Ozan to give his speech about the waqf in Turkey. The floor is yours.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear distinguished guests, dear distinguished rectors, the vice rector of the University of Gondor, and dear professors and the students. So inshallah I will try to explain or let me say elaborate the things, actually the important issues that was raised by our rector and then the rector of the University of Gondor and Professor Sami Al-Aryan regarding the issue of waqf. We need to be independent, he said, Professor Sami Al-Aryan, and waqf as an institution provides such an flexibility and opportunity to be an independent in terms of the intellectual capacity for the Muslims. Let me let me just quickly open my presentation. Yes. Today I will try to briefly explain the current state of waqf in Turkey from the perspective of Islamic economics. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. I will try to just briefly mention let me say, just after the definition and legality of waqf in Islam, I will try to summarize the historical insights for waqf in Ottoman Empire and Turkish Republic, and then the current types of waqf in Turkey in nowadays, and the constituents of the waqf sector in Turkey. Then I will try to briefly summarize the current economic and financial state of waqf in Turkey, and then I will try to point out some issues actually in terms of the Islamic economics and finance. So let me briefly start with the definition of waqf. As most of you know, waqf lexically means suspension, detention, or stoppage in Arabic. And technically it refers to the detention of an asset in the ownership of Allah Ta'ala and devotion of its usufruct for a charitable purpose. Our beloved Prophet ﷺ, he defined the waqf in an hadith that Umar radiallahu anhu sought his advice ﷺ, for a land in Khaybar that was assigned to him as a right of booty, that in shi'ta habasta aslaha wa tasaddaqta biha, means if you wish, you detain the asset and give its yield to the charity. And detention, by detention actually, it means detention of the asset from the transfer of the ownership, gift, or to be gifted or to be inherited. So when we come to the legality of waqf, of course, I mean, there is not a single verse that directly, is revealed for the legality of waqf. But of course, since it's a type of sadaqah, we can evaluate it within the ruling of the verses related with the relevant to the concept of sadaqah, one of which is Astagfirullah, لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم. Means by no means shall you attain righteousness unless you give freely of that which you love, and whatever you give of a trust, Allah knows it well. And our beloved Prophet ﷺ, in one of his hadiths, he said that إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث صدقة جارية أو علم ينتفع به أو ولد صالح يدعو له. Means when a child of Adam dies, his deeds come to an end, except for three things. Sadaqat jariyah means perpetual charity, and waqf is one of them. A beneficial knowledge, or a virtuous descendant who prays for him. And we know that from the previously, very early monographs written in on the Ahkam al-Awqaf, means rulings of Awqaf, like Al-Khassab, for example. He just states that the first one who actually established a waqf is the Rasulullah in Islam, in the second year of Hijrah, and he also refers roughly 19 awqaf of the companions, radiallahu anhu. So let me quickly mention the historical insights for awqaf in Ottoman Empire and Republic of Turkey. Firstly, as our professor Mehmet Bulut explained that, Ottoman Empire has a very rich heritage in terms of awqaf. So, but in terms of its administration and the, let me say, intervention of the state into the administration of awqaf, we have several steps. Let me briefly explain them. First one is the Awqaf-ı Harameyn Nezareti. We call it Turkish, and it means Ministry of or Nezaret of Foundations of Holy Cities. Then in just after 250 years, I mean, since the increasing number of the awqaf by the sultans of Ottoman Empire, actually there is a need to, I mean, update this Nezaret, means the ministry, and the awqaf selase, or Ministry of Three Awqaf, was established. Then it actually became Awqaf-ı Humayun, or let me say, first sovereign ministry for Awqaf in the Islamic world in 1838. Then in 1920, Şer'iye ve Evkaf Vekaleti, or in English I can say Ministry of Religious Affairs and Foundations by Ankara government was established, and the responsibilities and authorities of former Şeyhül İslamlık or Evkaf-ı Humayun were transferred to this new institution. Then, just after 4 years, in 1924, Directorate General of Awqaf was established, and actually this is the, I mean, at the beginning, at the first years of the Republican era for Turkey, there was a very high number of controversial issues, such as transferring of the public services done by Awqaf to Ministry and Education, and including their budgets, and some Awqaf assets were even sold in that period. So in 1926 Civil Code, actually the status of waqf had been changed to tesis, we call in Turkish, or it means facility. And actually this is the secularization. This is an attempt to secularize the awqaf and decontextualize them from their Islamic basis. But with the efforts of the let me say the Turkish people, in 1967 a new law of waqf released, and actually it constituted a rebirth of the Turkish waqf system, as not only the property rights of awqaf, but also I mean the waqf and companionings were strengthened in that sense. And the last point I can mention is the law of waqf, new law of waqf, released in 2008, and actually it let me say includes the returning the awqaf assets from seized by government institutions to the fused awqaf. I will come to that point. What is the meaning of fused awqaf, inshallah? And there are important efforts for restoration of all the awqaf assets. So let me explain the current types of awqaf in Turkey. We have fused awqaf, we call it mazbut awqaf, or we have annexed awqaf. We have new awqaf, we have minority awqaf founded by non-Muslim communities, and we have designation awqaf. So the fused awqaf represent the Ottoman awqaf heritage, as they founded before 1926, and have been managed by Directorate General of Foundations. Right now there are almost 47,000 fused awqaf, and they have a huge size of assets in terms of in economic terms, I can say. And their main source of revenue is the rental income. So revenues continue to be spent for the purposes that were indicated by their founders. And then we have also annexed awqaf. They are also they represent also the Ottoman heritage, awqaf heritage, but the difference is that they are managed by those who come from founders' offspring. And also we have new awqaf, and these awqaf actually founded after 1926, and currently there are almost 5,500 new awqaf, and most of the economic contribution actually coming from the awqaf sector is reflected through the new awqaf. I said that minority awqaf are the ones which were founded by the non-Muslim communities, and we have also designation awqaf, which is called as al-waqf al-irsadi, and I mean they are the designation of the state in some special purposes. For example, we have almost 1,000 social aid and solidarity awqaf, and we have Marif Vakfı for education. And let me explain the constituents of Turkish awqaf sector. We have masjids and Islamic educational institutions, firstly. Then we have waqf universities, waqf vocational schools, and waqf primary and high schools. We have hospitals of fused awqaf, waqf university hospitals and hospitals of minority awqaf. And then we have companies, for example, we have subsidiaries of awqaf, we have participations of awqaf, we have commercial enterprises of awqaf, and we have other waqf assets such as awqaf lands, awqaf residences, and awqaf stores. In terms of development of old waqf properties, I can say that actually there are almost 9,000 fused awqaf assets, including very historical masjids, madrasas, khans, and other kind of buildings. And roughly 60% of them have been renovated and developed in accordance with their original structures. And of course, I'm just mentioning the ones which are within the borders of Turkey. And also, there are, let me say, different methods that Directorate General of Foundations used for the development of waqf properties, such as flat for land basis, or renting in return for renovation, or build, operate, and transfer. And throughout last few years, I can say that almost 80 waqf assets in Istanbul, including Sultanahmet Mescid or Ayasofya Mescid or Şişli Etfal Hospital or even Gezi Parkı, they were returned from Istanbul municipality to the fused awqaf that have been the original owner of these assets. And these are actually good examples I can mention. And when we come to the current economic and financial state of Turkish awqaf, you can see the revenues of Turkish awqaf here. The main sources are membership fees, and this is actually an interesting issue because a waqf in classical terms cannot operate in such a way through membership fees. This implies a concept which is called NGOization of the awqaf. And we have foreign aids which are at very, let me say, low levels, and we have subsidies from government, we have other donations and aids, we have revenues of commercial enterprises, we have financial revenues, and actually, unfortunately, there is a very controversial issue here regarding the financial revenues, which is almost 80% of these financial revenues of awqaf are unfortunately interest-based revenues. And also this is an, let me say, extension or implication of the secularization or decontextualization of awqaf from their Islamic basis. And I can also say that there are other revenues which are the revenues coming from their assets. So when we just analyze the expenditures of Turkish new awqaf, we can see that most of the biggest portion of the pie goes to the social service, and then health is another important indicator, and we have also other purposes like economic and social development, culture, education and research, and charity and voluntary activities. And when we look at the Turkish awqaf assets, new awqaf assets, actually, as you see, there is an increasing trend. In 2019, almost 82.5 billion Turkish lira is the total value of the Turkish new awqaf assets. And when we just look at, it might just, give an idea regarding the role of awqaf in the circular flow of Turkish economy. As you can see, it was placed on the center. Of course, in the economy, it is not the waqf are not placed within the center of the Turkish economy, but it has a really good, let me say, contributions. That let me explain what are these actually contributions. I mean, for the prominent economic activities of the waqf sector in Turkey, three important and highly value-added sectors are outstanding, which are research and development, higher education, and national defense, electronics and machinery equipment. So most of these three economic activity fields actually done by national defense subsidiaries of Turkish Armed Forces Foundation and the waqf universities. So when we look at the R&D expenditures in 2018 by total R&D expenditures in Turkey, as you can see, roughly 16% of these R&D expenditures were done by the national defense subsidiary companies of waqf, and 2% of them is coming from the waqf universities. As you can see, of course, the national defense subsidiaries has an important role, and these companies, I can mention Aselsan, Roketsan, Havelsan, and TUSAŞ, and these four companies actually are in the top 10 in terms of R&D expenditure. For firms in Turkey, as well as they are in the top 100 in world in terms of national defense equipments production. And when we come to the higher education, currently there are 73 waqf universities and 4 waqf vocational schools, in Turkey. And there are 127 public universities in Turkey. This means that roughly 14% of the higher education fixed capital investment was done by waqf universities. And roughly 15% of current expenditure on higher education is done by waqf universities. And the waqf higher education institutions constitute roughly 38% of the total higher education institutions in Turkey. And when we come to the national defense, in terms of the employees, subsidiary companies, national defense subsidiary companies of waqf, in terms of their employees, they constitute 27% in whole national defense industry. And for revenues of these subsidiaries, we can say that their revenues constitute the 40% of the total national defense revenue as a sector. And for exports, they also have 38% of the total sector exports. And when we just, I just try to briefly mention the definition of our beloved Prophet ﷺ in the beginning of my presentation, as you might remember. He said that ﷺ, if you wish, detain the asset and give its yield to as sadaqah, right? So here today, actually, we have a problem which is called as NGOization of waqf in Turkey. They just become an NGOs. So they are. It means that actually they are mostly, some of them, of course not all of them, some of them are mostly based on membership fees and donations. But in principle, the idea of waqf is contrary to such a concept. So when we try to understand the waqf impact on Turkish economy, we should exclude all of these items which are contrary to the basic philosophy of waqf. And we can say that, such items can be included when we try to understand the waqf impact on Turkish economy. That are new waqf services, fused waqf services, the annexed and minority waqf services, the national defense subsidiaries in terms of R&D and their production, and Waqf University services in terms of their scholarships and R&D. So let me finalize my presentation by mentioning the issues from the perspective of Islamic economics. Actually, we have some issues, some of which I have already mentioned, but let me start with the issue of qurba. So, qurba, it means the intention to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, this is, in terms of the Hanafi law tradition, actually, qurba is one of the foundational conditions of waqf. So if there is not an item or if there is not an intention of qurba, it cannot be a type, it cannot be accepted as a waqf actually. So in today's awqaf sector, we just, as I mentioned, see that a concept which is NGOization of awqaf and secularization of awqaf, which decontextualize them from their Islamic basis. So the item of qurba, I can say that, is not there completely. So it is the first issue. The second issue is the substitution, and of course, it has been the central issue in terms of the, legitimacy of waqf throughout the history as well. So, today also, some of the awqaf assets, especially by the Directorate General of Foundations, can be sold or can be, let me say, can be substituted in some specific conditions, and they might be not in line with the fiqh of waqf. And the other issue is the legitimacy of Directorate General of Foundations, which have been, let me say, discussed almost almost 200 years. So this is another issue. And also we have legal entity of awqaf, because as you know, the awqaf are the institutions or are the assets that were accepted as be owned by Allah Ta'ala. So when the awqaf actually are assigned as legal assigned a legal entity, then they became the owner of some other assets. So it actually it is quite a controversial issue then for our perspective as well. And also the lack of Sharia supervision for awqaf is the other issue. There is another Sharia board under the Directorate General of Foundations, which has conducted the Sharia supervision processes for the awqaf. The other thing that I mentioned before is the interest revenues of awqaf. Also, the taxation of awqaf is an important issue. They are exempted actually from the corporate tax, but they are subjected to the income tax, stamp duty, and other kinds of taxes in Turkey. And the last issue is the returning the awqaf assets seized by the state. Alhamdulillah, there is a positive developments in that regard. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much for our second keynote speaker, Dr. Ozan Marashla. And so currently he has been serving as research assistant in Islamic Finance and Economics Department in our campus, Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University, and also he has finished his master degree also in this campus. So without any further delay, I will open the question and answer sessions while our minds still fresh after observing much valuable information regarding Islamic paradigm and waqf development in Turkey. So about your information, right now we have also online audience from Indonesia. Also we are accepting their question also. So for lectures and ladies and gentlemen audiences, now we open for the question and answer. Please raise your hand and ask the questions to our keynote speaker.
We not listen to guess that question.
Yeah, I think complete.
Yeah,
Okay. So I was thinking it will be longer, but it's okay. Okay, now let's move on to our third keynote speaker. So it will be interesting because now we can see or we can learn about the comparison about waqf development here in Turkey and also in Indonesia. Will be presented by Dr. Khairul Umam, as also the Vice Rector of Unida Gontor. Please, Dr. Khairul Umam, the floor is yours.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Honorable Rector of ISU, Rector of Unida Gontor, and lecturers, students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'du. Before the two speakers, and actually the four speakers before us, talking about the very important issues in our nowadays, in our contemporary life, which is we are facing the secular modern life system, and still we are Muslim, we are developing based on our values. And one of the experience that has been done, it is the experience of Gontor that we would like to share with you how Gontor has a very unique experience to develop Islamic values, Islamic worldview in the system which is we ourselves sometimes very difficult to explain how this work. So it will be very interesting. So my title is Waqf Management based on Waqf values. It is actually Islamic values, like our Professor Bulut has said, the Waqf mentality. Also we will talking about the independence and so on. The next slide, please. So today, Gontor, we are managing education. We are also still continuous having construction, new building. We are now still in construction of hospital and many buildings. And we are also managing more than 30 business units. For more information, that we are living in a boarding system. Today we have 36,000 students, which is living in 24 hours together with us, with the teachers. So you can imagine how to manage the 24 hours system in a life, in a day, how to manage that, how to make this system. So it is a very unique system. Also in the university, we are also applying this system. We are 24-hour system. The rector, the dean, the lecturers are in the same campus, in the same place. So the students can interact with us every time they want. Sometimes they ask the signage after Maghrib, after Subuh. So we don't have any time hours, the formal time hours is actually. So it will be very interesting. So we were established in 1926, but then being waqf in 1958. In the first time we are being waqf, we has 18.5, just 18 hectares, but today alhamdulillah we have more than 1,500 hectares of land. So it is how we develop waqf and how we make the waqf productive. So let me share the next slide. So actually Gontor is developed this system, this education, this waqf based on the human in Islam, in the Islamic worldview, which is human is created for ibadah, wa ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun, and human is actually Khalifatullah fil ard. Then in our educational system, the students are asking to be with us in management. So you will find in Gontor that the management of Gontor is actually managed by our own students. We have, like what I say, we have today our own factory on mineral water, on the bread, and many factories. And the managers is actually our students. So you can come to us, for example, and ask the manager, and he is in Ilahiyat faculty, not even in economic faculty. But again, it is the way we are managing. In this thing that we believe that human is actually, Allah has given us many things, but unfortunately, the modern knowledge, the modern system reduce humanity, reduce us. In economic, for example, human is just seen as the factors of production. So we are just seen as like the capital. So sometimes many education institutions educate their students as he will be the workers. He just will be the officers and so on and so on. But again, in Islam is actually, we cannot treat human is like that, because human, Allah has given us as Khalifatullah fil Ard, and because of this function, Iblis is not rida with us. So it is, we are very big. So human in Islam, we are really in the very high level in this world. So we have to educate human like what Allah set our function in this life. It is why in Gontor, so the education is based on this. So we are educating our students, and we believe them to manage their self, to manage the money, to manage the enterprises, and so on and so on. So very interesting when we see that very young people, they are maybe not professional, but they are managing a big factory. They are managing a lot of capital that we have. So in Gontor, for example, there is words that always be said in our daily life: give, give, give, and give. We never think about take and give and take, because it is Khalifatullah fil Ard. Because we are just Abdullah, and Allah gives the rizq to us. So in our mind as Muslim is how to give in this world, because Allah is enough for us. Allah will be always giving us, and Allah will be asking us what you serve to the Ummah. So it is actually the waqf mentality. It is actually the waqf that we see here in Turkey. All over Turkey are living in this kind of waqf mentality, in the waqf heritage. So the next slide is just about our organization of Gontor. So please, the next slide, please. It's just simple. Gontor is there are the leaders of Gontor. There are 3 persons. We are say the 3 sheikhs of Gontor, and Gontor has 5 institutions. The first is the secondary level, and there is the university level, student affairs, graduate association. For example, in Turkey, we have more than 260 our graduate, and on Saturday, before few days before, on Saturday, we are meeting with our graduate who are learning, who are studying in Turkey. And they are coming from entire Turkish, talking with our rector, talking with us. So it is the family. So we are like the family, which is, we are sharing these ideas of sharing, these ideas of giving, the ideas of becoming something in this ummah, in this world. So it is a little about Gontor. So the next slide is the values that Gontor developed we are living on these values. And the management of Gontor, how the Gontor management its waqf also based on these values. And these values is actually the Islamic values, which is Tawheed, which is Khalifatullah fil Ard. We can see on the slide we have 5 values, and we are living in these values. It is not only taught, but we are living in these values. The first is ikhlas, sincerity. Yes, we are Muslim when we believe in Allah. Our life is for Allah. Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillah. Then ikhlas is the first value, and this ikhlas will implement, will influence the values after that: simplicity, self-sufficiency, Islamic brotherhood, and freedom, like our professor has said before about the freedom. So ikhlas, for example, in our university, in our education, it is easy to say we have no salary system, for example, but it is actually very difficult to explain how. For example, the rector is not paid because he is a rector. I am the vice rector is not paid because I am the vice rector. But we have the welfare system. We have the family welfare system. We are living with that. So just discussing about this one system is sometimes very difficult. Like the Western, will be very difficult for Western to understand the Ottoman Empire, to understand the Turkey, how they can finance the government through waqf. So it will be very difficult for the secular worldview to understand that. But for us, for Muslim, for mu'min who believe in Allah, living just service, inna salati wa nusuki wa mahya wa mamati lillahi ta'ala, it is the way that we are doing. Giving is something which is in us, in a Muslim. Because you can imagine, we are 24 hours educating our students. How can we make time and we make salary based on time? So it cannot be in our educational system. So I just want to talk about this, and I will finish. I guess. So we are living in this system. So because of this system, ikhlas, so it become very easy for us to ask our students to not thinking about the materialism worldview, to not thinking about what should I take from you. But it is very easy for us to think, what can I give for you? So when this values is done, when this values is becoming the common values between us, so it will be very easy for us to manage the 24-hour system together in educational system. For example, in university level, we have what we call by the managers of dormitories. So they are actually they are students. They are the third year students. They are managing the second and the first and the second year students. They are managing the whole time, the 24 hours in the dormitory. In the Subuh prayer, for example, they will come to their members and they will make them getting up and asking them to let's pray together in Subuh prayer, and then after that usually they have reading Quran together, they have Hifz together, and then going to the class. Some of them becoming the managers in hotels, managers in like mineral water factories. Some of them also becoming teachers as well as also university students. So we are living in that system. When I was in the university student, for example, I became the secretary of the Sheikh of Gontor. So you can imagine I was in the 4th year university student, but again, I became the secretary of the Sheikh of Gontor. So you can imagine how this system works, how the system mandate us, how the system believe to us to learn, to educate ourselves, to become, to be able to be useful in our society, to be ready for our society, and so on and so on. So we have still, of course, have simplicity, self-sufficiency, sufficiency, for example. It is the essence of Muslim, because when we are Mukhlis, when we are Abdullah, so we need not to others is actually when it is why in Gontor, when we have this system, when since 1926 we are not depending on outside of us, so we have to think, we have to be self-sufficient. It is why then finally, gradually, we are establishing, we are developing our enterprises from 1 to 2 to 3 to 3rd, and so on and so on. And now, alhamdulillah, we have more than 30 enterprises, which has become the fun of our educational system. Yet in Gontor, students understand this. The students do not pay the teachers because they really understand the teachers has become the managers. Some of them become the managers. We develop enterprises. So from that, the teachers actually, quote unquote, are paid. The welfare system are managed. So it is why we will never find our students saying, "Teacher, why you teach like this? Why you ask me to do this Islamic belief? I pay you, so you have to follow me." So we don't have such that system in our so we also don't have any students who make what we say in Indonesia like demo. They are coming to us, protest to us, and so on. Because when they protest to us, actually they are protesting to themselves, because we are managing together. We have shura. You are who manage the dormitories. You are who manage the facilities. So when you protest, actually we are protesting to ourselves. So let's do everybody has to think, what can I give? Finally, maybe my last presentation is waqf must be managed by these values, by these Islamic values. Waqf cannot be managed by the materialism worldview. Waqf is coming from the Islamic worldview, and then waqf, to be fruitful, to be developed, must be also managed by the Islamic values, which is coming from the Islamic worldview. It is why education, it is why the Islamization of contemporary knowledge is very important in that, because it will instill a person, it will change a person. When the person has the Islamic value, everything he manages, he not become just Muslim, not just mu'min, but he gradually become muhsin. The words, the verse that always said in our university, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. We believe when we do mujahada, we do juhad in our life, in managing, in developing everything, Allah will give the subul. But again, we have to do this in the level of ihsan. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for Dr. Khairul Umam. Besides acting as the Vice Rector of Gontor Unida, he also served as Director of Zakat, Infak, and Sadaqah in Unida Gontor. So, without any further delay, let's move on to the last, our keynote speaker will be Mr. Shahrudin. He will present the management of waqf institution in Indonesia, issues and challenges. Please, the floor is yours.
His Excellencies Rector Prof. Muhammad Bulut of ISUS and His Excellencies Professor Hamid Fahmi Jarkasi, Director of UNIDA Gontor, as well as the panelists in this today's seminar, Prof. Sami, Dr. Ozan, Dr. Khairul Umam, all participants offline and online. Yeah, for your information, today's seminar attended with many channels of participants, online here, offline at UNIDA Gontor, as well as in the Gontor TV channel through YouTube. We can again see this very valuable seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rabbi israh li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli, amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, I think I stand for the last presentation and I bring to us only a part of a very, I think, a little slide of my presentation because the time of limit and the participant, I think, very waiting for his time for lunch. But before lunch of the stomach, but I will give you some nutrition of the information about the management of waqf institution in Indonesia as your give token appreciation from Indonesia through UNIDA Gontor. Okay, this is my slide. Actually, I am currently serve as the director of International Center for Waqf Studies, which is the rare institution, global institution who which integrating and the has collaboration with the Central Bank of Indonesia in our university at UNIDA Gontor. We agree with Director Prof. Muhammad Bulut that the Ottoman Empire has a long history of waqf. In my presentation, in the next slide, we would like to inform that Indonesian, as well as we have more centuries of experience in waqf development. As for your knowledge, first we can see, next slide please, the committee. Next slide. We can see in the 5 pages of a long history of waqf in Indonesia. We can divide into 5. First, before 19th centuries, the waqf in Indonesia was established and embedded in the form of cultural law based on Islamic teaching. This is what we have experienced with our past people in Indonesia. But again, in this before 19th centuries, there is no specific regulation on waqf in Indonesia. Next part, during 1905 to 1935, the Dutch colonial, that was our rector said that we have experienced about 300 years of occupation in the Dutch colonialization. The Dutch colonial issued some letters requesting the local government in Indonesia to administer all of the assets of worship, including that is a waqf masjid, which is based on waqf through the land and the buildings, as well as after that letter, the development becoming the approval of waqf donation. For example, for Indonesian people during the waqf must get the permission from the local government to give the donation of waqf. This under the Dutch colonial. After that, to include a judge in the local government. For what? This is for the some issues in waqf that will be dispute between the government, local government, as well as the Dutch and the donators at that time. The third page, the old orders, which is in during 1935 to 1968, the government was supported the existence of waqf lands, and its rule, the local government's rule, are to maintain those lands and utilize them for religious purposes only, which is in this page, the development of waqf, focusing on masjid and madrasas or Islamic boarding school, as well as the tombs or cemeteries at that time. The fourth page, the new order, which is in beginning from 1968 to 1998, several regulations from the Ministry of Religion Affairs, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and several governors' instructions had been revealed at that time. So in this page, the development of waqf come into the picture. They appear to be a big asset in the Indonesia at that time. And the Reformation time, it's signed from the Suharto, the president of Suharto, end of the regime. We know that the reform order, the government issued Islamic law compilation, as we know in Bahasa, Kompilasi Hukum Islam, with managing tree about the marriage and the inheritance, as well as waqf at that time. And MUI, Majlisul Ulama Indonesia, or Ulama Board in Indonesia, issues a fatwa on cash waqf, Prof. Mehmet, in 2002. Our ulama in Indonesia allow us to give a cash waqf at 2002. That is a fatwa from MUI, Majlisul Ulama Indonesia. After that, we have in Indonesia Waqf Act number 41, which is agreed by the parliament at the 2004. This is the 5 long page of Indonesian history on waqf. Now we turn to the issues of waqf management that we face in Indonesia. Actually, there are many issues. As Dr. Ozan give like substitution or istibdal, also the legal entity of waqf. I think the same issues that we face in Indonesia nowadays. But in this today presentation, I would like to raise only 3 main, in our opinion. First, lack of expertise that we face in Indonesia. How actually this waqf asset can be productively managed, but we have a very a few people, a few expertise to manage this very large waqf land. As Dr. Umam said, that we have only one private institution like us, we have more than 1,600 hectares. But fortunately, Unida Gontor, we have some expertise. Also, we have long experience since 1926 in managing this waqf asset to be productive for the purpose of education. Second issue is a financial report standard. This actually worldwide facing these issues, which is according to Indonesian accountancy board, we has launched I think this year, the standard for reporting for every waqf institution. But again, because of the very current regulation in accountancy, that maybe 1 or 2 years this can be applied in the waqf institution. Why? Because this report is very important. Why? For the potential waqif, then we go to the website, for example, to see how actually the waqf institution can productively manage the asset for the purpose of al-khairi of the humanity, for example. And the third issue of management, waqf management in Indonesia is capital to develop waqf land. As we know, the asset of waqf in Indonesia is very large. It's more than 4 million meters. Yeah, but again and again, most of this very large waqf land in Indonesia still need capital to build and to being a productive in the sense of this waqf land. And before the final slide, this is the challenge that we have in Indonesian waqf management. First, low level of literacy on waqf. This is why we have in our university Unida Gontor International Center for Waqf Studies, with the main idea to educate people in Indonesia particularly and the global, inshallah, how the ummah well known about the waqf in terms of fiqh, in terms of sharia, as well as the Islamization of contemporary knowledge regarding waqf. Second, education and awareness. This we are, I think, in the proper university with ISU and Unida Gontor. We raise the education and we are concerned in the awareness of the ummah how actually the waqf can be the center of our thinking, how the Ottoman Empire can live more than 6 centuries through waqf. Yeah, this is why I think Indonesian government can copy paste from the experience from the Turkish country how they can manage the proper waqf from the revenues as Dr. Ozan presented before. And the third, limited understanding on productive waqf. As I thought before, Indonesian people only think about the religious purposes like masjid, madrasah, and a tomb and cemeteries. No more about the how actually this cash waqf can be managed and can be integrated with the Islamic financial institutions, like we have in the past Baitul Mal wa Tamwil. There is a good rule to interact with this waqf fund as well as another source of fund in the Islamic civilization. And the last presentation that we propose some solution for our country after this today's seminar. Propose solution in developing waqf. First, focusing on cash waqf. This is why, Prof. Mehmet, we come to Turkey and to your university. We want to learn how actually the cash waqf can be the leader of instrument that we can manage productively for university purposes, as well as you thought that this is the university with the ranking, the good ranking to eradicate the people who cannot again and again come to the university because of the poverty. Maybe in next second part of the university level, all of students in ISU as well as in Unida Gontor, for example, there is no tuition fee, for example, or maybe director can give more scholarship for more students in ISU as well as in Unida Gontor. Secondly, the involving potential parties who can contribute, no only for university, but the industry can be engaged with the waqf fund, as well as the governments. Last, flexible management to create innovative model that we can create from the past experience from Ottoman civilization, that we come into the current model of waqf management. This is all my presentation. Thank you to Director of ISU, Istanbul Sabahat and Zaim University, as well as ICAS International Center for Alcohol Studies, for managing this today's seminar. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for Dr. Shahruddin for presenting his presentation. Okay, the committee just told me there is no question and answer sessions. Well, it's quite sad for us because the topic is past, but the speakers here can deliver the main idea regarding the Islamization of temporary knowledge and the waqf and how they are all connected and intersect each other. It's very, very interesting topic. But yeah, time is limited. And let's thanks for our keynote speakers here who have given their time and energy to give insightful knowledge to us. Okay, thank you. And sorry for me if I made mistake. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for the speakers and also moderator. I would like to invite Director of Sabahatin Zaim University and keynote speaker to receive a souvenir Indonesian traditional gift from Unida Gontor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, come on. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. This is, for here. What is inside? There are some books, but also we have, we have to present this. You have okay. We will go for a lunch. Thank you so much. Let's go. Let's go.
Finally,